We weren't for the housing program. That means you don't want poor people to have houses. Oh yeah, look what happened. You know, the rich that made all the money and they get the bailouts and the poor loses their houses. So this whole thing about, you know, if you believe in liberty, you have no humanitarian concern. This is one thing I've come to a firm conviction. Because all of us, I believe, have humanitarian instincts and we do care about our fellow man. So if we do, what is the best system of government? To me, it's a free society and a sound money system and free markets and property rights and contract rights. This whole idea that we say, well, you gotta have these safety nets and you gotta have take care of people. It sounds good. So whether it's runaway welfareism or socialism, it hasn't worked very well at all. If you look at all history, if you look at the history of famines throughout all recorded history, famines do not occur in countries that are free. They occur in authoritarian countries. We still have hundreds of countries, around the world still suffering. I mean, the African continent, they still suffer, but they don't have freedom either. And yet, what I fear is that we've slipped away of our confidence and our understanding and are willing to defend these principles of liberty. And that's what this campaign is all about. To buck up the confidence and the understanding of how freedom really works and not be afraid of it. Because that is what I think made our country great. We were the freest and most prosperous country. We were never perfect, obviously. But if we sit back and say, well, I think the government needs to do this and the government needs to do that, all of a sudden the people are forgotten about. Now, as far as cutting goes, we do need to cut. Now, I would, if we get into a major crisis where we have to start from scratch, I'd start from scratch. I wouldn't have very much in Washington, D.C., I'll tell you. But I think we should also plan to work our way out of this. Just as an individual tries to work their way out of a bankruptcy, I think we should try to do that. And I believe, and from talking around the country, I believe that the greatest reception I get is, yes, they agree with this, but can't we have priorities? I say yes. Why don't we have priorities where if we have conditioned the people, if we have conditioned the needy who are getting health care, the elderly that are dependent, is that where we're supposed to cut? Or should we not consider cutting all this overseas spending and bringing last 10 years, since the wars have been going on, we've spent over $3 trillion, and it's endless. One thing, the real tragedy is how many of our people have gone sent over there and come back and, we lost over 8,000 Americans. We had 40,000 severe injuries. We have hundreds of thousands now literally applying to the VA for benefits for all kinds of reasons, unknown, undiagnosed diseases, as well as post-traumatic stress syndrome. And that is one area we do have an obligation. We should and we can take care of veterans. Isn't it rather ironic in the announcement yesterday that our president said, well, one place we need to do a little bit of cutting is make the veterans start paying for more of their services. I thought that was really good. So, but cutting back, and it's not like this is my idea. A lot of Republicans in the past had this belief and conviction. And even President Bush, when he ran in 2000, they talked about a non-interventionist foreign policy. He talked about, no nation building. Don't be the policeman of the world. He won the election. But what have we had ever since? Both parties pursue these wars. Even Obama was the candidate that was saying, we can bring these troops on and end this. But it's not ending. Even in Iraq, that is a mess over there. Afghanistan is a mess. And if people would just look at the history of that region, it doesn't look good for us unless we do come out of it. But we're probably in close to 150 countries, over 900 bases, $1.5 trillion a year. We're still subsidizing Japan for their defense, South Korea. We subsidize Germany for their defense. Just think if we could just immediately bring our troops home and have them spend all their money here at home instead of overseas. receiving end as well. If you say something like that, you say, oh, you don't support the troops, you're un-American, you're not patriotic. Tell you what, one of the things I'm proudest of, and I don't usually more about this, but maybe one thing I'm proud of is the fact that the donations from active military duty, they send more money to our campaign than all the rest of the candidates put together. Yeah. 2 years ago, when they first mentioned that to me in Sioux, I thought, well, that's real interesting. You know, like I had a moment of a little bit of a surprise, but a pleasant surprise. Then I got to thinking, you know, I was drafted in '62 during the Cuban crisis. I ended up being in the Air Force for 5 years. But in '65, I was getting off active duty, and I stayed in the Air National Guard. I went back to my residency. In '65 was the year they escalated. LBJ was escalating in Vietnam. And I got to thinking, well, I was in the military, and a president was talking about escalating the war and spreading it over into Cambodia and all this, but that was the last thing in the world I wanted. So that's the way we have good people in the military. They're there for the right reason, especially in the Guard unit, in the reserve. They're in there because they want to protect our country. And look at how they've been dragged around multiple times overseas. And so, no, it's very logical for the military people to say we want a commander-in-chief that will be cautious. You know, being cautious would mean turning it over to you to help make the decision, because it should be your representative in Congress to make a major decision. If it's truly necessary to go to war, let Congress declare the war and win the war and get it over with. Now that we have so little respect for our Constitution and national sovereignty, it started early on, right after World War II. When you think about it, Korea, we went on a UN resolution, no president, no congressional authorization. We did that in Vietnam, and we do it with all these wars. It actually got a little worse with Libya. The president didn't bother telling anybody. You know, he just goes and shifts the funds around, and there we are in another war. And we're actually in 6 wars right now with bombing countries. And it just seems to be strange to me that that wouldn't annoy people. You know, some people think it should annoy them. Oh, they wouldn't be that annoyed if they want to come here and do us harm. I'll tell you what, if somebody came here and was doing that to us, I'll bet we'd all be unified, independents, Democrats, and Republicans, because we wouldn't put up with it. So it's very logical to me that when our policies overseas like this, it annoys a lot of people. It's also bankrupt. That's why I think it'd be so much easier to start cutting there. And then we can whittle away the departments and all. But it is misleading to hold your breath and think that this super committee and Congress and the president have every week or 2 years a new plan on cutting. Do you know that not one of those plans has anything to do with cutting? Because there's only one budget account, and that's this year. And there's no plan to cut anything this year. Their plans are, you know, I think the super committee is supposed to cut $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years, and all they're cutting are the proposed increases. So, and I think most Americans are probably pretty disgusted with it, and they understand it, and I think that's why people aren't too happy with what's happening. But no, we'd have to have true cuts, but we need to free up the economy, free up the people. Our liberties are undermined. Our personal liberty. All we have to do, I think, symbolically, one of the things that shows, you know, how intrusive the government's been, is all you have to do is get accosted by a TSA agent at our airport, and then you realize probable cause. Yes, this little girl. We have to, probe her and do all things, elderly people and all this. This is disgusting. And this has come out, once again, with this atmosphere of war, whether it's overseas war or this whole idea of passing the Patriot Act after that. I don't think we need the Patriot Act. I think the Patriot Act is an attack on our